angry that you're lonely? Or has loneliness become so much a part of your identity that you're not even willing to change it? I know that nobody wants to feel like a pawn. I do know this, but the attention economy is a full-blown science about human behavior. It is. So, all that science that we have, instead of it being used for human flourishing, it has actually been primarily exploiting our human weaknesses because that's the most profitable, lowest common denominator. So Americans' loneliness is a commodity, but yours doesn't have to be. Loneliness. It was studied, it was mapped out, and a product or products, I would say, have been built for it. So I did make a video about what ad agencies put out with feminism a while ago. And if you want to see angry people, not that there aren't plenty of them online already, but they didn't want to believe me. So my actual degree is in advertising and marketing communications, which I didn't really go and use, but it was nevertheless, I love branding. But a lot of the problems that we have today, they are not accidental. They have actually been engineered. There are rooms of people in cities like New York City or in Silicon Valley or LA who sit there, and it's their job to fill the gap between your need and their product, or there is a need and it's their job to develop a product. That is what they do in America, the land of consumerism. Okay? So I want to give a diet industry parallel. This video is about loneliness, but we've seen this before. So with the diet industry, there is an answer that exists, a solution, but solving it would completely kill the market. Giving people almost near solutions has created an empire. The entire US health and wellness market is about $2 trillion. Loneliness is the same model. So by the numbers, John Lannerberg of the economic circuit, he says that loneliness is a huge market that could exceed $500 billion by 2030, depending on the growth of AI. 1 in 4 people worldwide feel very or fairly lonely. That is 1.4 billion people. 74% of Gen Z report feeling regularly lonely, even surrounded by digital social circles. That's a known phenomenon. Even living in New York City, people will say that they feel very alone when there's millions of people around them. Why? Because they haven't formed a connection with a person to their depth level. So online doesn't surprise me either. The U.S. Surgeon General declared that loneliness was an epidemic in 2023, compared to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And their growth forecasts rely on our loneliness staying the same or getting worse. So, since it's a product, let's talk about the markets. I have come up with 3 markets that I see in the loneliness circle. The first one is the smallest. Always, in all areas, it is the smallest. It is the solutions market. You think that because there is a problem that we need a solution, and that the solution would be this great big giant market. It is not. Why? Because usually in these markets, it requires participation. So it requires a person to actually believe that change is possible and then be willing to overcome it. So you'll have therapists, coaches, real community builders in here. They actually have to charge people more because what they're selling actually works. And also, because of the law of supply and demand, they have to charge more because less people are willing to put in skin in the game and actually do it. So for them to even make a legitimate amount of money, they actually have to charge people. It's not free. And as I said, the customer has to want out of the problem that they have. They have to want the solution. So few buy because change is hard and the exit requires effort. So then that brings in a really big market, and that is the grievance market. And this is the one I'm going to talk about the most, so I'm just going to introduce it here and we'll talk about it in a second. But this grievance market is so large, and it's been enlarged because of online. So all it requires is an audience who has a wound. So this is where you get these tribal leaders, people like Pearl Davis, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, Rachel Wilson. what they're doing is they're selling you an enemy, not an exit, not a solution. And I honestly think that these people have picked a side that they felt would be the most profitable that they could speak to. So for instance, like Pearl Davis, she's a woman who speaks and airs out male grievances. She has a big business. I mean, she has minimum 2.1 million followers. So there are angry men who are so happy that there is a female voice attacking women. So many people are looking for online creators who will simply be a voice for them, who will air their grievances, who will represent them online. So this grievance market, guys, this was actually engineered by the algorithm. Everybody can just look at their analytics. And so this is where you get all these formulas for hooks that cause rage bait, how you get people to click, 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 and stay on views. This is profitable by the numbers, by the masses, like, so just the sheer amount of people who are angry. So it's profitable for the tribal leaders, and then it's profitable for the platforms. And I am very sorry if you are not aware of this, but corporate entities and now content creators, for the most part, will always choose profit over human flourishing. Not just the corporate, I said also the content creators. So grievances plus technology has created our third market, and that's what I'd like to call the replacement market. So it's the most dangerous of all of these. Things like replica, character AI, OnlyFans, the rise of parasocial relationships. So they're not selling anger. They're not selling solutions. They are actually selling a substitute that is so convincing to the human brain with all the science we have that our brain stops demanding the real thing, and it's rewiring people's brains slowly. People will go online, they'll buy a virtual companion, and then what happens next? You stop reaching out to real humans who disappoint you. The AI and virtual companion market is projected to reach over $140 billion. We've got people spending hours and hours on dating apps, even though they know they're bad, they can't even get off them. But it has trained people's brains to look at people like a grocery list. And then these people have completely forgotten how to even connect with a person. And you're wondering why relationships are transactional. OnlyFans, it has an intimacy aesthetic to it with zero actual intimacy, but people love it because there's no rejection. So the grievance market keeps people angry. The replacement market keeps people sedated. Both markets keep people isolated, and neither market has the financial incentive to change that for anybody. So let's go back to the diet industry parallel. Market one would be the solution, right? So that would be having an actual nutritionist, a personal trainer, a game plan, putting in some hard work, right? Market two, our grievance, would be like having a diet pill or these programs that where the people will blame your metabolism. It's not you. It's not the way you eat. You're big boned. It's the food industry. It's everything is always somebody else's fault, never the ownership of the person in the middle, right? Grievances has nothing to do with ownership. Market three, I would say actually right now, probably Ozempic and all of its friends, buying a solution to only gain a new problem in the end. Almost every single person who's taken GLP-1 and Ozempic and all of those are suffering new problems. So those are our current markets. Let's talk about this tribal economy that people live in online. Okay, so what do Myron Gaines, Pearl Davis, Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, people like that, what do they all have in common? I would say in their audiences, they never call anybody up. They only point to what is pulling people down, who is at fault, who can you blame. Their personal audience is never at fault. Their audiences have never done anything wrong. Their audiences are always victims. They'll end up having this shared hatred functioning as like a fake intimacy in these comment sections. So maybe some of you millennials can remember the early days of social media. It wasn't always bad, guys. People think that social media was like the ill of the world. It wasn't bad in the beginning. So before, this is like probably like 10 years ago, back in the day, legitimately it was like find your tribe. It was your people like with fitness, especially with like business and networking. It was legitimately about making people better. So people had the opportunity to find somebody online that they would never have access to in person. And I will have to make a separate video because we were most definitely betrayed by the makers of the algorithm. But there was a time where you could have a tribe online, and the algorithm, or I should say the makers of the algorithm, have essentially changed the tribal economy based on human behavior. They were just looking at the metrics. So the outrage economy was born out of analyzing the in and out group bias, us versus them. They literally just looked at the data of human behavior. This is all science they're using. And they said, we could make more money from outrage than loyalty. So now, the tribes online really only exist in opposition. So to have a tribe today online, you almost always need an enemy. If you remove the enemy, the community will just dissolve. So that means that the tribal leader can never defeat the enemy. The enemy has to be there. So that means women are the problem, men are the problem, anti-feminism, anti-body shaming, anti-left. The other side is always the problem. We've got people so angry these days that they're like, we should take rights from other people. Let's bring back slavery. Only white males can be landowners. The whole landscape is so absurd and it's borderline inhumane, legitimately. So you're not being sold a solution in these tribal groups anymore. They are simply using your pain for profit. So you'll think that you're joining and you have a community, but literally you have subscribed to having a common enemy. And the loneliness doesn't go away. But now you have a name for your pain, and it's the other side. So I'd like to give a very relevant and quick example of how catastrophic this has been, especially in the dating scene, because I find this to be very, very strange. There is a massive dissonance going on there. So thanks to these angry tribal groups, men and women have literally been trained to view the opposite sex as the ultimate outgroup, right? The enemy. So you'll have men watching content that tell them that women are all hypergamous, right? They're superficial and they're untrustworthy. And then women will watch all this content telling them that all men are toxic and they're predatory and they're immature. But the thing about the algorithm is that it can never erase the deep-seated biological need for human intimacy. So now what we have are these people who are angry, lonely, and they're still searching for a significant other. Now, this is where it gets crazy. Where do they go for their loneliness? Into enemy territory. Enemy territory. Now, if they go on a date with the opposite sex, what are they doing? They are looking for red flags. They're like going out with these on high alert, right? Instead of enjoying talking to the person, they are going in with absolute suspicion, waiting for the person to prove their tribe right so that they can get back online and sit there and drop it in the comments section. Now, I'm most definitely not saying that people shouldn't be cautious and be wise. Please, please be. But I'm also saying that people are on red alert and they are always on the defense now. And that's something that I find very hard for my channel because I am actually attempting to meet in the middle with objectivity and joy for both men and women who are, for the most part, I'd say, subjective and angry. So back to our question in the beginning, okay? Are you a customer of the solution? Or are you a customer of the grievance? The grievance economy cannot monetize somebody who's actually trying to get out of it. Okay, so it needs you to stay angry. It needs you to be wounded and perpetually healing. It needs you to stay tribal. So then misery becomes the product and you are the market. As long as complaining feels like progress, they win. As long as a chatbot feels like a connection, they win. As long as these online tribes feel like a community, they win, and you are a lifelong customer. So how do you get out? If you no longer want to be a customer of the grievance and you want a solution, the off-ramp is always agency. It's what I talk about so much on this channel, agency. Individual agency, or AKA responsibility, none of them are selling that because that ends up eating into their revenue. You may leave. So they're never selling you any outs. They're literally promoting that you stay in a negative feedback loop in a grievance economy, a lonely grievance economy forever. And it's only with your own agency that you will get out of it. Thomas Jefferson said about us in America that we have been endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He did not say we were entitled to happiness, but we are entitled to pursue it. If you don't want to be alone, then you have to stop being a commodity and you have to have some agency.
Join me on the floor and let's see what you can do. Is it just for show? Say, girl, can that body move?